How did Emmanuel Macron become so unpopular?
Well, it's quite an incredible feat. He just happened to ignore the will of the French people. Just that small issue. And President Macron has been quite unpopular basically since his election, and this is not uncommon. French presidents tend to be quite unpopular. I mean, François Hollande had some of the lowest ratings in history, which is saying something because the French, generally speaking, tend to hate their presidents. But following the French elections in the summer, which was sort of blatantly just distorted to try and remove the influence of the Front National in a way that I think is extremely undemocratic. Macron has now named Michel Barnier as the new prime minister, who was basically Britain's antagonist during the Brexit negotiations. And so the French are very confused that they've been protesting as they usually do against this because they don't understand why this random technocrat has been elected as or has been appointed as the French prime minister when he wasn't even elected. He's just come out of nowhere. He's like a mushroom or fungus that's just sprung up out of the blue. And there are also other issues with his presidency as well. The fact that, in the short space that he has left, he's basically going to be a lame duck president because not only is he hated by the French public, but also everyone in the Senate also despises him.
Now, Esther, I'm going to change tack quite dramatically. I've been absolutely shocked by the killing of this 80-year-old man in Leicester who was walking his dog when he was kicked to death, apparently in the throat, allegedly. Police have now arrested, of all things, a boy and a girl, both aged just 14, plus another boy and two girls aged 12, even younger. What does this tell you?
It tells us a very uncomfortable truth, which is the rotting of British society. Unfortunately, incidents like this, while are not common, are not becoming less common. So these kinds of incidents involving young people and violence are becoming more and more prevalent in the news. And it's indicative of major issues that we have in this country regarding how children are raised, the kinds of homes that they come from, the lack of respect for authority. Young people these days are seeing people getting burgled, having their phones, nicked, seeing people getting away with petty crimes with impunity, and yet they see no police presence. They're seeing a prime minister that's calling riots due to the brutal murder, the stabbing of three girls at a Taylor Swift dance class as just sort of a congregation of racists, as if the whole country would have breathed a sigh of relief if we found out that the person who killed those young girls was a white British male. I mean, it's completely tone deaf, but this is the environment that young people are growing up in. They're growing up in a country where law and order seems to mean less and less. They have very few rules. Most, I think, over 40% of children now are growing up in single parent homes, and we know that statistically that makes you more likely to go down a life of crime. So it's actually indicative of rot in British society, a much bigger problem than just saying these are sort of bad apples and that not all young people are like this. It's actually a much bigger societal problem, and getting to grips with it is very uncomfortable because unfortunately we have to have conversations about the kinds of households that are producing such young people, the kinds of demographics, and what's making it more likely for young people to turn to such acts of violence. If you see the sort of the stabbing pandemic that we have in this epidemic that we have in this country, it's mainly people under the age of 25. Why is that? Why is it young people that are mainly stabbing each other with impunity, even though there's so many measures to try and bring down the levels of knife crime in this country? And that conversation is very uncomfortable to have, but it has to be had, or else it's just going to keep getting worse and worse.
Well, I could see all the tripwires you were laying there in the sort of conversation you wanted to have. In this case, we won't be told much about the background of these kids because they're kids, and that's exactly what we do need to know. Though the parents should be in the dock with them. Esther Krakue, thank you so much for your time.